My name is Huli. I'm with Jobs with Justice, and I was very interested in this meeting. Thank you. I'm not going to be able to stay till 5. I'll do my best.
I think we might be able to get started now. How does that sound, Jessica?
Great.
Okay, great. Welcome everybody for coming to this forum about redistricting in California. My name is Sarah Jarman. I work at Senior and Disability Action. Jessica Lehman is also from Senior and Disability Action. Before we get started on our agenda, we have Spanish interpretation available. Si alguien habla español, tenemos interpretación hasta español y podrías ir al botón de interpretación y poner Spanish y puedes oír lo que está pasando en español. You can find out what's going on during this meeting. We do have Spanish interpretation by pressing the globe at the bottom and clicking on Spanish for interpretation. We also have live captioning available. You click on the button at the bottom that says view, I believe it says show subtitle, and you will then be able to see the closed captioning that we have available. Well, also please write notes in the chat and we'll be sure to be reading those for purposes so that everyone can hear and see what is going on during our meeting. And make sure that you speak slowly for the purpose of interpretation and the live captioning. Thank you so much for coming. And I just wanted to say a couple reasons why we're here, why we're doing this. Senior and Disability Action is hosting this meeting with our partners, the California Alliance of Retired Americans, DREDF, the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, and CFILC, California Foundation of Independent Living Centers. We are all groups that work directly with seniors and people with disabilities in California to advocate for our rights, including home care, housing, transportation, and other community services. We all work against discrimination and for inclusion. That's why we're here today. Our voting districts need to represent us. I think we could all agree on that. And we have an opportunity right now to give direct input in this process of redistricting. Today, we're first going to hear from Ann Marks from the California Redistricting Commission about what redistricting is and why it's important. And most importantly, how you can participate. Then we'll hear from Kimmy Lee from Bay Rising about why redistricting matters in the Bay Area. And then we'll talk about what the issues are for people of color and seniors and people with disabilities. And then we'll get to work. We'll have time for everyone to participate in this process in giving feedback on the maps. And someone said that the maps are hard to understand. I'm actually with you on that. This is a process that's new for a lot of us. So we're here to learn together about how we can make the best input possible and just make our voices be heard, that this redistricting process is our process. We're so happy you're all here. This is really exciting to have you all here today. And next we're going to hear from Ann Marks. Thank you so much for coming today, Ann.
There we go. Hi, thank you all. I'm very happy to be here, and thanks for inviting the California Citizens Redistricting Commission to present at this gathering. So I'm the statewide outreach manager for the commission. And in this presentation, we'll be going over who the commission is, background on redistricting in California, and how to participate in the process. So I'll go ahead and pull up my slide deck and talk everybody through that as we go as well. Please, if at some point it seems like I'm talking about something that's not showing, somebody tell me wrong page showing, and I will be more than happy to try to switch it over. Give me 1 second here. All right. So you should be able to see that now. Thumbs up or something. Can you guys see the slide deck? All right. Great. So one of the things, like was mentioned, different parts of this might be confusing. One of them is that the purpose of my being here is not to actually take direct input today. The California Government Code section 82533 strictly forbids commissioners or staff from taking public input outside of a regularly scheduled commission meeting or an official public input meeting. However, you're always welcome to visit the website, wedrawthelines.ca.org, and we'll talk more about that. The /participate is probably the best place to go. And you'll find instructions on how to do that when you get to that page about how to do all the participation, and we'll go over it today as well. So we can discuss questions about the redistricting process. We can talk about how to participate, and we just can't talk about, I can't talk about specific district boundaries or your specific input. And as you'll hear also, there's actually a meeting going on right now. So literally there are all kinds of ways to participate. All right. Okay, so I'm showing my next slide now, and it talks about the different reasons why redistricting is important and why you should be involved. So one of the greatest powers that the people of California have is to elect their own representatives. And that's representatives in government who represent their needs. How districts are drawn can make the difference in between empowering and maximizing the voters' voices or minimizing and muting those voices. So in most other states, it's politicians who draw the lines. But California's Citizen Redistricting Commission was formed to take back that power and have the people redraw the maps for Congress, for state Senate, then state assembly, and Board of Equalization. The commission is made up of 14 citizens. They've been through a rigorous selection process, and they have, and what we're hoping for is that by fully participating in and monitoring the upcoming redistricting process, or the ongoing one actually, that more communities will have the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. So speaking up about your community is critical to helping keep your community whole to extent possible. And that's about geographic wholeness depending on where you live, if you're co-located or not. So this ensures that your voice is heard by your elected leaders when making decisions such as the quality and funding of children's education, addressing transportation concerns, or determining tax rates. And input that you all provide is invaluable in shaping the new political boundary. So on the next slide, there are 4 pictures and 4 sections. I'll go through them one at a time. The power to, and the pictures are just graphical representations. Power to the people shows a number of people standing as a group together. In 2008, California voters passed Proposition 11. This was the Voters First Act, and it authorized the creation of an independent commission to draw district lines for the sections that I mentioned earlier, but only at the state level, state Senate, state Assembly, and Board of Equalization. Then in 2010, Proposition 20, the Voters First Act for Congress, added the responsibility of drawing congressional districts to the commission. So this process was historic in California. It transferred the power of drawing district maps away from politicians and gave it to the people. And there are only a large handful of states who do it in this way around the country. So it is unique, and this is only the second time that this has occurred. So the next section is champion your issues. And it shows another small group of people, but in this one, they're holding up signs, but the signs don't act, the signs on this picture don't say anything, but they're like protest or gathering signs. So for that, having the opportunity to elect representatives that champion your issues is important in a state like California, because issues can vary drastically even from Northern California, where it might be environmental and economic issues that are of interest, or Central California might champion water and agricultural issues. And then Southern California might champion issues about transportation and housing and employment. So it can be really different in different areas. The next section is funding priorities. There's a picture with a few different circles of representative of different things that might be paid for, utilities, transportation, healthcare, things with a thermometer and the first aid sign. So tied to the election of representatives that champion your issues, you might want to elect representatives that have your financial interests at heart. So when the time comes to build a budget, they'll be fighting to ensure your community gets the financial resources that it deserves and that it needs for all kinds of services, like we mentioned, education, maybe water, or has been a very important issue the last few years, fire protection. The last of these four is around community boundaries. There's a folded up picture of some houses. It's kind of a map, but it doesn't look much like a map. So just pictures of different housing units. The redistricting process is all about drawing lines and determining which communities should be grouped together into districts. So the input that you provide in this process is essential to help the commissioners understand where your community starts and where it ends. And redistricting in California is one of the few civic activities that any Californian can provide input into. It can ultimately impact the law and regulations, tax structure, how funding is distributed, which services are provided, but there are no citizenship requirements or anything else. Anyone who's in California is welcome to participate. All right. So on the next slide, it's about different redistricting efforts. And there are 5 sections here outlining the different types of efforts that are going on and some different county seals. So we're one of many efforts that are happening right now in California. But like I mentioned, we're doing state offices and the federal offices, the counties, cities, school districts, water districts, community college districts. They're all redrawing their local districts at the same time. So we wanted to bring this to your attention because it can be confusing when there are different efforts happening simultaneously. And we certainly encourage you to be involved in those local efforts besides the statewide effort. All right, this next slide illustrates that there are 6 different line drawing criteria, and it splits them out into their 6 groupings. Districts must be of nearly equal population to comply with the US Constitution. And these are the 6 things that the commission must follow, and they actually are in order of priority. So they must consider them in this order as most important to lesser important, but all of them have to be considered. So first one, equal population to comply with the US Constitution. The second, districts must comply with the Voting Rights Act, and that's to ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. The third is that districts must be drawn contiguously so that all parts of the district are connected to each other. The fourth, districts must minimize the division of cities, counties, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the extent possible. So I mentioned that earlier. We'll talk more about communities of interest in just a couple minutes. The next one is that districts must be geographically compact. That's such that nearby areas of population are not bypassed from more distant populations. And this is one of the tricky places. This requirement refers to density, not shape. So a very specific requirement on compactness. Then the last one, and one that you might not have heard of, is called nesting, or the requirement for nesting districts. And wherever practicable, each Senate district should be comprised of 2 complete and adjacent assembly districts. A Board of Equalization district should be comprised of 10 complete and adjacent state Senate districts. So this is called nesting. So this next piece is very important. In addition, there are things that they cannot consider. So the place of residence of any incumbent, any political candidate cannot be considered when the commissioners are creating a map. Districts may not be drawn for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, a political candidate, or a political party. They just can't even consider them. The next slide is about communities of interest, and there is a drawing of a group of people with different diverse qualities and characteristics. And when the maps are being drawn, the commission has to be mindful of the community's interest. And one of the interesting things is that all of those other criteria can be gathered in different ways. The city and county information can come from jurisdictions. The census data provides some of that information. But we need communities of interest information from Californians around the state. And a community of interest is defined as a concentrated population which shares common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. So keep in mind that a community of interest is not the same as a district, and a district is not a community of interest, but communities of interest are key building blocks of districts. Some of the ways that you might describe your community is geographically, like waterways, where if there's a river, if you're near a beach, about whether you're in a rural area or an urban area, if you're in a mountainous area, if there's a mountain range that borders your community. There are also boundaries that you might describe your community with, as far as like the city limits or township limits or school areas, potentially school districts. But it's also could be about things that you have in common. So places that people shop, might be where people have similar work opportunities, different kinds of pieces of what's happening in your community like that. All right, so your input is vital to the success of the commission. And we are in the line drawing process. That process has begun a few weeks ago. And we have Draw My California. We've got a number of websites and they have really similar names, and that can be confusing. This slide deck is available publicly, and I think that today's meeting hosts might be sharing it with you as well. So if you're having trouble tracking, that is one way you can find it. But you can go to drawmycalifornia.org, and I will go ahead and go to a website that will take us there. So I'm going to go also to the commission's personal website, or organizational website is called WeDrawTheLinesCA.org. And I will click over there. And this is one of the times where my screen might get stuck. So if it does, somebody please let me know.
Are you intending to move your, should we be seeing something else yet, or?
Just give me 1 second and I'm going to start the new share button. And I will take us right up here. Okay, so I am on the
There you go.
We Draw the Lines CA, and you can see it now, yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the We Draw the Lines CA.org, at the home page, there is an option to click on participate. So that's, I'm going to go there, but actually before I do, there is a language tab on, I believe, every one of our pages, including the home page, and you are able to go and click on any number of languages. I'm not sure exactly how perfect the translations are, but they should be helpful in being able to participate if you do use another language. So at the participate page, you have different opportunities to go through the contact part of our website, to actually have the mail address where you can write in by mail. There is a visualization feedback form, which we might talk about, or you might talk about a little more later in your breakout groups potentially. And then there are these 3 different online tools, including the drawmycalifornia.org. So this is the one that looks like what's on your slide, where it highlights 3 different tools. So today, you're all going to be focused later on in your breakout groups more on the visualization feedback, if I'm recalling correctly what was decided today. But later on, you might want to look at Draw My CA Community or Draw My CA Districts. These are other online tools where you could go more in depth and get a little bit more involved in proposing a district that you think makes sense, rather than responding to a district or giving higher level kind of meta input. We will take a look. We will take a look at some other areas there in a second. Oh, actually, let me just describe what can happen. Even these tools look a little bit the same, but on the drawmycacommunity.org website, this is where you can tell the story of your community. So the pieces we were describing about as far as communities of interest. And you go on, there are tutorials, there are language tabs if you need translation. You can skip the tutorial. You have the opportunity to go onto these as a guest or to log in. If you do choose to log in, you'll be able to save your work, you'll be able to revisit your work. And that's true for all of these sites. So if that's something you'd like to do, we would advise you to log in, but if not, you can continue as a guest. And so this, that you're then going through a process where you can describe your community and enter different pieces of information. When you're done with that, you also have the opportunity to draw a map. And then when you're ready, here's the Draw My Community. And then you can also submit at the end. So I'm going to go back now to the participate page, and just a few, actually the next one there that I mentioned is the drawmycadistricts.org tool. It looks very similar, but there, instead of just talking about the community more generally, you would be choosing specific lines, and you have the opportunity to do a compliance check and see if the district that you have drawn complies with all 6 of those criteria. So it will take into account the nesting and population, and maybe say you need to do, you need a little more population in your area, or that you're missing one assembly district in order to build a Board of Equalization district. The third tool is even more detailed. It's really for mapping specialists and mapping nerds, and it is a GIS platform. It requires a plugin. I'm not going to go into much more detail on that. Usually that's a professional mapper or maybe a consultant hired by an advocacy group. But all of these have different ways of getting help. So when you are on the web page, you And actually, I'm going to go ahead. I'll show right here. There's a phone number, the 510-280-3305. That is live audio help that's available. There also is contact@drawmycacommunity.org, or contact, actually they're the same for both of them. So then you can get into an email situation with online support. And there's actually a, if I can see the chat window here. Oh, because I'm on our page, sorry. If I go back over, I'm gonna click back over to Draw My CA Community. And there's an icon on the bottom right of a body. It's green because they're on right now. And I can go in and I can immediately chat. And in fact, you can see my chat history before where I had previously asked questions and been given a response, and it stays on my screen. Okay, I'm going to go back to the slide deck now. And I think, let's see if you can. Okay, I think that now you can see the slide deck.
Yes.
We good?
Yes.
Okay, great. I put down that I don't have the visual of all of you anymore. I'll need to, there we go. Pull that back up. All right. So again, like I said, we've got all of those ways to provide input, or to get help with your input online, verbally, with the different translated user guides. But then also there are in-person assistance centers. They're all ADA accessible. There are 6 of them around the state, and you can see they're at Fresno, Long Beach, Oakland, Sacramento, San Bernardino, and San Diego. You are required to seek an appointment in order to go there because of the pandemic issues, but to my knowledge, they're definitely able to make appointments, and there's lots of availability. So encourage you to make use of that if that's the way that you would like to provide input. Let's see. Okay, I think that's it for that piece of it. We do have, this next slide is additional ways to provide input, and we did talk about some of them, but what's showing is the website, WeDrawTheLineCA.org/contact. By email, Voters First, spelled out, FIRST, act@crc.ca.gov. And then by mail, there is a written mail address that is on the slide deck that will be available to you later. And then through the community feedback on visualizations tool. And again, you'll be looking at that, I believe, in the breakout sessions later on. It's a very simple form that's really easy to work with and provide some real-time feedback to the commissioners. Even during a meeting, it will get posted immediately. And actually, I should mention on that the way that the visualization maps work is that the commission is meeting weekly. This week, they have 3 visualization days of meetings, and they're reviewing geographic areas for the potential district ideas. So like I mentioned, they're using all of the communities of interest testimony that has come in throughout the summer that's still coming in now. Then they assess how that testimony could possibly form district boundaries. And they have to consider trade-offs because there are trade-offs in all of these eventual maps in order to take into account all of the criteria. So as they visualize the community groupings that they're going to be redrawing, they do ask for everybody to participate and give their input. I see that there's a raised hand, and I've been asked to, we're going to hold off on questions for a little bit because the speaker after me has a pretty tight timeline, but I will be here for as long as is needed. So we'll hold on with that. All right. So one of the things that you all can do, right now we've got about 30 people on the meeting, and we've got the help spread the word slide up. So we do want you to share information with others about participating, and you can find all kinds of information on the WeDrawTheLineCA.org website. And this will include information about our upcoming meetings under the meetings tab. But you also can spread the word to your network by using our social media toolkit, which comes out every week on Mondays, or by following us and subscribing to our social media yourself. And then you could host a viewing party, which could be to watch the redistricting basics video, which talks more about, less about the how to provide input, but more about the underpinnings and the history of the process. And that's on our website as well. Or you could ask to have one of these presentations like I'm doing to be held for a different group that you're involved in and bring people together in that way. So you are encouraged to spread the word as much as you can. All right. This next slide is about timeline and where we're at in the process. So it starts in the February through July timeframe, and it says that there was education presentations going on. June through September, we had public input meetings on communities of interest. In August, we received the census data, which was late because of the pandemic, but that's when it arrived. And then September 20th, we had like a reinterpreted version of the census data that had to be adjusted for California with certain reallocations, for example, where incarcerated people and how they needed to be considered in this process. October through November, we have begun the public input meetings and the line drawing sessions. And now, while the commission's focused on the line drawing and the visualizations, we must post the draft maps no later than November 15th. But right now, the commissioners have set a target date of November 10th. So they are hoping to have those official draft maps up towards the end of next week, but they must do it by November 15th. Once they do that, there is a 14-day period where the commission cannot display any other maps. And they have to make them, people have to be able to react and to respond to the maps that were posted. So that will begin as soon as the draft maps are posted. Then after the release of those preliminary draft maps, there'll be more public input meetings, more line drawing sessions, more opportunities for you to provide your input about specifically on the draft maps or anything else in the process that you still want the commissioners to consider. Then when we get to December, it's possible that they will post additional official draft maps that they want feedback on. But the final date is that no later than December 23rd, they must display their commission approved maps. They go up for a few days and then they have to be certified to the Secretary of State by December 27th. So we are towards the end here of this process. All right, just about done. Just a reminder, like I said at the beginning, we can't take public input today. There are certain kinds of questions I can't answer, but certain discussions that the hosts of this meeting might be leading with you all. And I will answer any questions I can about process or try to find where things are on the website or in the commission's resources if I can help point you in those directions. And
this is Jessica Lehman. I just want to jump in that while Anne has to say that the commission can't take input, you are going to be sharing input today. So be thinking about what you want to say. You can't give it to Anne, but we are going to make sure you have opportunities to do that.
Absolutely, perfect, thank you. So I'm now showing a slide with my contact info and the commission's contact information. If you need that, the commission's phone number is 916-323-0323. If anybody needs to call in. And then my email address, anne.marx@crc.ca.gov. And I will be staying on and handing the speaker screen over. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Anne. I learned a lot myself. I would have to say I know very little about this redistricting process, as maybe most of us here would say. We're going to hear now from Kimmy Lee, who is the director of Bay Rising, a group that works specifically with communities of color and working class communities around civic engagement, making sure that our votes matter and that we are represented in so many different ways. And Kimmy's organization, Bay Rising, has been involved in the redistricting process. And she's going to tell us a little bit about what it means for us here in the Bay Area and their experience of advocating around the redistricting process.
Hi, everyone. So I can't turn on my video. It says the host won't let me. So it's also fun. You can look at our street mural, but if you want me to, yeah, it just says video, unable to start
I'm
video.
sorry, I don't know why. We will try to figure that out.
That's
Oh,
okay. I could keep talking. Should I keep talking?
I think I just figured it out. Try it now.
Oh, yes. Okay. Hello,
Ta-da,
everyone.
sorry.
That's okay. Thanks for having me. So again, as Sarah mentioned, my name's Kimmy. I'm with Bay Rising. We're a coalition of about 30 grassroots organizations in the Bay Area who come together around voter organizing, voter engagement. So redistricting is very important to us. And I realize, is this being translated? So I'll slow down. What you just heard right now is about the state redistricting. There's actually a county and city level process also happening at the same time. So it's important for you also to know that the maps and all the different tools you just saw, there's a version for your county, and then there's a version for your city, which then impacts your school boards and everything else. So today, though, we're only talking about state. And it's a really big thing to try to redraw maps in California. And so, we just got census information, which was a little late because of COVID. And many of our communities look different. There's definitely more people of color. There's a rise in certain populations in certain areas. And so when they start looking at these maps, you've got to try to balance all the different diversity and looking at the different numbers. And so it's not so easy to just say, oh, let's just cut it here or there. There's a bunch of stuff to juggle. And so this is where it's really important for us to pay attention to what's happening. And as the previous speaker mentioned, there's different maps coming through, but again, it's the whole state all at once. So it's a lot of maps. And then every little move you make impacts all the other ones. And so my point before about diversity and trying to balance numbers, it all kind of impacts each other. So the fact that California lost a seat for Congress because of the, in Orange County, like Southern California, the census count, that impacts us all the way up here. Like we just see the shifts in the movement. And the timeline is really tight. So the idea that there's so many maps, when the commission has been having hearings, sometimes it's hours and hours of public testimony because it's all these different maps. And we've had people on the phone till very, very late at night, just trying to give input. So it's really important to be connected, to work with community organizations that are doing this already. There is a coalition of community groups that have been monitoring this and trying to figure things out. So depending where you are, we're a coalition that has groups in San Francisco, in Oakland, in Santa Clara. And so our local organizations have been watching what's been going on. And so there's more there. So if you want to get involved with your local redistricting, you should do that. But I did want to just bring up an example of why this is so important. So in the Bay Area, San Jose, Fremont area, before, one of the districts was really cut up. And actually the Asian population had been in 4 separate districts. And in 2010, the communities of interest down there said, hey, we are a neighborhood that wants to be together. So they redrew the map to connect these different Asian communities in one area. And then what we saw just recently was they were able to elect Alex Lee, who was the youngest progressive API legislator at the state level. And it was because of the new map that was drawn that allowed him to get elected. So, having that shift made a difference. So just, small example, but that's basically what we're talking about is as these maps are recut, it does move things around, and it'll be really important for us to pay attention. So I'll just stop there and see if there's any questions, or I don't know what the discussion was going to be today.
Thank you, Kimmy. That's really helpful. That giving some examples like that is great. I think we have time for maybe one. We maybe have time for one question. We do want to make time for some small groups and talk a little bit about specifically seniors and people with disabilities in this process. So, but I think we have time for one question if anyone has a question. If the map is presented in 6 to 11 days, what impact do we have now? I guess that would be a question for Anne.
Great question. It's amazing how dynamic this process is. So right now, at this minute, commissioners are in a meeting. They are looking at certain areas and discussing visualization maps, discussing some of these progressive viewing of those maps, or some people have called it a reiterative process as they continue to look through it. I have been told that like the draft maps that come out late next week might look very, very different than the visualization maps that are being considered. And that in turn, the maps that get posted as the official draft maps, by the time the final ones come out more than a month later, they might look completely different again. So the commissioners are getting fed all of this data. Some, like I said, some of it's real time where it goes immediately to a table that they're able to review. Otherwise, everything gets passed on to them in some way. So if you send an email in, that email gets put into a database that they have access to. The data is actually available on the public website so for everybody to see as well. And you can search. You could search by a particular neighborhood. So let's say that down in the San Jose neighborhood that Kimmy was just talking about, if a lot of input was given around some of those neighborhoods, you could go in and search for those neighborhood names, or you could search for a particular highway number and see if people have given input on that. And maybe it's just to say the lines in district number blank were changed in 2010, and they are very effective for these reasons, and I want them to stay that way. And that might be somebody's input, but you might be able to search by that district number. But not everybody knows about the district number, so it just depends on what kinds of things you search for. The commissioners are able to do that all the way through. If somebody provides an email with a video attachment, that attachment will be given to the commissioners or transcribed. If that's done in Vietnamese, it will be translated into English. So they will continue to get this information all the way up through the end of the process. And even this kind of a talk like we're doing today, we're going to continue to schedule them up until December 15th, where we're just a few days out from those final maps. They have a very hectic schedule over the next month and a half, and they are very committed and working really hard.
Great, thank you. So now we're gonna just give a little bit of background about why this is important for our communities. You know, there will be potential impacts on seniors and people with disabilities and people of color with the redistricting process, as we've just heard about. And there are some cities or neighborhoods that have a higher concentration of seniors or people with disabilities. And we might actually want to keep our communities together in one district so that we have more voting power, as was mentioned. And then, you know, people with disabilities are more likely to be poorer than the general population. So we want to think about, are we included in a district with rich people or poor folks? And what kind of representation will that allow us? And then another thing to think about is what are the kind of issues that are important to our communities, like affordable housing, accessible voting, as which was already mentioned today, good public transit, and how does redistricting affect whether we will be heard on these issues? So I think one thing to take away about what is just said is something I hadn't really thought about is it's not just how do we necessarily, all we're trying to do is change the maps as they, change the maps from what they are. Maybe they were already changed to something we like and we want to make sure that they don't get changed again. So that's another form of, giving our input in this process. So Jessica, did you want to talk a little bit more, just a reminder of how to get involved and then lead us into our small groups?
I do. Oops. I was trying to spotlight myself, but it won't work. So maybe Sarah can figure that out. All right, so I'm going to go over the ways to give input, and we are going to do this in small groups. We're going to have 2 different groups for San Francisco and one for North Bay, East Bay, anywhere else in the Bay Area. And then we're going to have another group for people outside the Bay Area. Sorry to lump you all together. It's just, we have a lot of Bay Area folks on the call. And thank you to our volunteer facilitators. So basically, you're going to have a facilitator in each group that will kind of walk people through giving input, and the groups will be a chance to do it together, as well as just to talk to each other about, here's something I'm thinking about that we should make sure to give input for, right? Because we're all learning about this process together. So this slide gives the different ways to give input, very similar to what Anne already talked about, but I just want to kind of reiterate. So there's a lot of different things on the website, which is great, but can be a bit overwhelming. So what we think is probably the easiest, that Sarah and I at least learned the quickest, is the visualization feedback. And I'm actually going to show you how to do that again. So on their, oops, that's not the home page. Actually, it doesn't matter. Let me go back here. So on the home page for We Draw the Line CA, you'll choose participate and then choose visualizations.
Jessica, it's showing. There you go.
Yeah, no, I went back on purpose. So then when you get to visualizations, there's different ways to do this. What I found is that you can click on this first link that says, please click here for shape files of the visualizations, but don't make the mistake of clicking on the shape files like I did. But then you have congressional visualizations, state senate, assembly. That's it, those 3. So let's say we want to talk about state senate visualizations. You click on that one, and it's going to give you a long file that has a bunch of different maps. And they kind of go in order by region. And so since I live in the Bay Area, I was looking for Bay Area. I'm not finding it at the moment, but it's here somewhere. So here's LA. Maybe you live in LA. And so you're thinking, okay, this is the map I want to look at. And it gives you, I think a lot of this is not going to be accessible, which is part of why we're doing this together, to support each other. So, at the moment, I don't see the name of the map. So that's a question we're going to ask Anne later. But you can look here and you can see, oh, that's interesting how they drew the line, between these cities or these neighborhoods. And so then you're going to give your feedback on that. And you are going to go to, where's my slide? Okay, so there's feedback on Airtable through their website. And this is a super simple form. I love this part. Community feedback on visualizations. What region or visualization are you providing input on? So the name, if you can find it. I couldn't find it just now. So I would just say LA County First Senate map.
And include the date, since it was like an 11/2, so at least they know which week you were talking about.
Good idea, the date. Thank you so much, Anne. And then what would you like to share with the commission? And so here you can write whatever you want, right? I think the line should be like this. I think this neighborhood should be with this neighborhood. I think there's a lot of seniors in this area. And so you really should be thinking about it this way. And then please select the counties relevant to your feedback. So you can choose as many counties as you want that are eligible there. I'll choose Los Angeles, and then you click on submit. Easy as pie, right? The hard part is figuring out what you want to say. And again, I don't think all of this is accessible, and so we will be doing it together. If anyone has any trouble with the technology, or maybe you're not at a computer or don't have Wi-Fi, whatever it is, let us know. We'll make sure one of us can fill this out for you. There's no identifying information, so anybody can fill it out for someone else. Okay, so that's the first one. There's a couple other ways to give feedback, but that's what we recommend to start with. What we can also do in our small groups, if someone wants to make a video, you could just do a little video of yourself talking about what you want to see in district lines. We can record it for you and we can share that by email. You can also send an email like Anne said, and that's good for really general feedback, right? If you want them to take a couple things into account and you don't quite know where to put that feedback, you can send an email. They are also having redistricting commission meetings right now, as well as tomorrow. And then we have the link here, it's all on their website, to log on to that meeting, and you can give public comment there if you want to do that. And then Anne also mentioned the in-person assistance centers where you can set up an appointment. So I am actually going to share this slide deck so that you all can look at it in your small groups. So you can, sorry, I'm seeing things in the chat now. You can see all those ways to participate, and then there is going to be a page for each small group. They're labeled so that you can put some notes in there. So let's do just one or two questions, and then we do want to save time to actually do small groups and give input. So I think Sheila had a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we take Sheila, we want to check in about interpretation. Sagrario or Yuvia, do you want to ask if people need interpretation right now? I'm not sure if we have anyone who is using it. They might be stuck in the interpretation line. Sarah, can you do that?
Jessica, quick
I'm
thing.
so sorry, I just switched to phone.
Thanks, Sarah. Go ahead.
Oh, I just switched to phone.
Oh, sorry. Can you just make an announcement about whether we have folks who need interpretation right now?
Si hay alguien que necesita interpretación a español, puedes levantar su mano. Hay alguien que necesita traducción a español, puede decirlo, puede hablarlo o levar el mano. I don't think there is anybody then.
Okay, so interpreters, thank you so much for being here. I think you can leave or take a break and stop interpreting and listen if you'd like to.
Yeah.
All right, and a question from Sheila. Sheila, go ahead.
I think my question is really basic. At least I hope it is. I'm overwhelmed and I don't understand what the heck we just saw. And it's not, and for once in my world, it's not about visuality, although there is an element of that. When I think about my community, I say to myself, okay, here are the places I go, here are the things I do, here are things that I, run into every day. There are problems. Here's what I'd like to see changed. I really don't, I live in a neighborhood, but most of what I do is not in my living neighborhood. It's all over the place. So I don't even know how to think about this. I understand what redistricting is in a very general way, but I don't know. I don't even know how to ask the questions. I don't even know what input is needed. I don't even know. And I know it's important. And so I'm here and I don't have a lot of spoons and I don't and I don't have hours to give to this process, but
Yeah.
if I could
Sheila,
talk
thank
to
you for,
someone, if I could talk to someone for like 20 minutes and they could ask me questions and I could answer them, I would do that. Is there a way
Sheila,
to
thank
do
you.
that?
Thank you for saying that. I saw someone else give a thumbs up. I think a lot of us have felt a little that way, that we could spend hours studying the redistricting process and working on it. And unfortunately, we're kind of joining late in the game and trying to share some input. And that's hard to figure out. So, you know, for one, you're not alone. Two, we're going to have a chance to talk about all this in small groups. And I know from the comments people put on the registration page that some people have a lot of ideas and experience with this. So I think hearing from each other in those groups is going to be really helpful. And Anne is also going to be kind of rotating between the rooms so she can help answer questions. Lastly, you know, I'll give kind of an example. So I have been trying to understand this myself just over the last few weeks. And so here's my example. I was thinking about, I live in Oakland, in North Oakland, kind of near Emeryville. And I'm not in a wealthy neighborhood. And the things I care about, obviously senior and disability issues. I care a lot about housing. I care about voting rights. You all know the stuff I care about, right? It's the stuff we all care about. So right now, I'm in well, I mean, the districts are different, but like for some of the districts, I'm with people in Rockridge who tend to be white and wealthier than people in my neighborhood. And so I'm not sure that I want to be in that same district, because I don't know then that the issues in my neighborhood are really going to be heard, or if they're going to be drowned out by people who have very different ideas of policing, for example, right? So those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about and looking at, where do I want the lines to be? And that is just a very individual answer, just, you know, what I'm thinking about, but just to give you an idea. And I'm going to ask Jody from Kara to give some comments, and then we'll move to small groups.
Hi, thank you. I am not going to be able to probably stay for those small groups, but I just wanted to share something that happened that kind of brought this to light to us. So we're statewide, and yesterday, the Marin County chapter of CARA met, and it was eye-opening how critical this issue is, because there are some proposals that will change the way their area is mapped from what it has been. So now there's, like, for example, the congressional district, just using that as an example, is really a skinny, long coastal district. So it's Marin, you know, Sonoma Coast, Mendocino, up into Humboldt. And that's all in the same congressional district. But some of the conversations that have been going on is to change that district and move it more easterly and include more of like Napa and maybe part of Solano. And so there's been some conversations about that. And when people heard that, it raised all kinds of issues, especially for people who just the similarity of the geography of being coastal versus, you know, a mixture, the transportation hubs and how transportation works in the district currently, which is very coastally designed in some ways to be able to get from different parts of the district more easily. How will that be impacted if, you know, the way public dollars get spent and allocated is by districts in some cases? And so could that impact the way transportation dollars might come in or housing dollars might come in? And so it's really overwhelming to think about this, but if you just narrow it down to accessing the services that you depend on, and where, how are those services provided? Are they city, county, state, federal? How are they funded? And then how do you want to be aligned to ensure that your community is going to get access to the funding and the services that allow you to live in the community that you've chosen to live in or hope to live in? So there's a lot of impact on these decisions just because of the way then political and budgetary decisions get made and transportation decisions. And so what seemed like this huge, overwhelming, like, how does this even impact me and why should I be involved at sort of the global level? When you really break it down to where you live and locally and think about what you need, who you need to live, what services you need to be around, how you want to be represented at every level of government, then it really makes a difference. It makes a really huge difference about who's representing you and what kind of dollars are going to come into your community based on where those lines are drawn. And so that's where the rubber hits the road for me on this, is really thinking about how we each need to, want to, hope to live our lives with the services that and supports that we need to live healthy and with some independence in our communities. And how do we want those communities to be assigned so that we have access to those services and can advocate for those that aren't there yet that we want to have. So I just wanted to share that because it seems so outside of me until it was really brought home how this could impact me on a day-to-day basis. So I thought I would share that as we all think about our own piece of this puzzle that's being created.
Thank you so much, Jody. We're really glad you were able to come and share some comments. So I'm going to move us into small groups. You are going to have 3 options: San Francisco, East Bay and North Bay, and anywhere else. I don't know if there are any South Bay folks. I don't think so. And then outside the Bay Area. So everywhere else in California. If you only have 5 minutes, please go ahead and join the small group for 5 minutes and say, hey, I'm going to put my input in this way so that we have a sense of how much input we're getting in and can share some of these ideas. I went ahead and assigned the people where I know where you are. And so I went ahead and put you in the group based on that area. And if I don't know, then it's going to give you the choice and I can move you after. And you'll have 15 minutes. San Francisco is facilitated by Fiona with Dolores's help. Kimmy, thankfully, is going to facilitate the East Bay, North Bay group. And Sarah will facilitate the outside the Bay Area group. And Anne and I will both rotate and help out as needed. And here you all go. So is there anyone that wants me to move you into a group? Joyce or Helen?
Well, I'm San Francisco.
Welcome back, folks.
Yeah. Could I say something, please?
If it's very brief, yes.
Yes. Our breakout room was a disaster because people monopolized and most of us could not say much of anything. It was not constructive at all. And I'm very disappointed. I just wanted to say that.
I'm sorry to hear that, David. Well,
we didn't get to do anything. I mean, we didn't get anywhere. We didn't get far.
Okay, so this was a tricky event, and I was in the San Francisco room most of the time, and we were challenged to figure out how to give input, right? So we managed to find the map, and the good news is that really what we hope people leave with today is some ideas on how to give input. And if people want to have more conversation, if you feel like you want to do that, we didn't have a chance to talk about it, there's no reason we can't set up another time to talk with each other, or we can certainly do that on email. We will send a follow-up email to everyone on the list. And so you can write back to us and let us know, hey, here's what I'd really like to see as next steps, right? How do we make this constructive and give some feedback? So I know some people have to leave momentarily. I want to be sure to leave you with a couple things. So, the biggest is, I was saying, to leave with knowing how to give your input. So be sure that you spend some time, if the web works for you, on wedrawthelines.ca.org. You have the slides now, and we will email those out as well. And those have the links to look at those. They call them visualizations, but it's the maps of what they're proposing. And you can find where you live or areas that you care about. And then there's another link in the slide to where to give feedback on that. It's a really simple form that you can fill out and say, here's what I'm thinking about. So please do that. You can also just send an email if that's easier. You can also email me and say, here's the feedback I want you to submit, and I'm happy to email that in for you. So those are the ways to share some feedback. Couple other things that we want to let people know about. So we mentioned there's also meetings today and tomorrow that the Redistricting Commission is doing. So feel free to join those. Those links are also included, or ask me if you need those. And you can sign up for information about this on the website. And I'm going to put that link in the chat as well. And all of this, of course, we will email out. And Kimmy mentioned that we have redistricting processes happening on all levels. So San Francisco is working on it. Oakland is working on it. Kimmy, if you have a couple links to where people can go for that information, sorry to put you on the spot. Please share those in the chat if you can, or we'll share those out over email. Also, always want to invite people to join Senior and Disability Action so that we can continue to be stronger and figure this out better next year, right? And make sure that seniors and people with disabilities really have a voice. So please go to our website at sdaction.org, click on Become a Member, sign up there, and you'll be in touch with us. Also, two big things coming up. SDA is doing an action against conservatorship next Friday at noon. I will find the link for that and put that in the email as well. And our general meeting is next Thursday morning at 10. So please join that. And if you look on our website, especially if you're a member, you'll get all that information. And it's 5 o'clock. I don't want to keep people long. I'm going to give Anne the final word. We will officially end. And if people want to stick around a little bit to ask questions or talk about some of these issues, feel free to do that. So let me turn it over to Anne.
Based on some of what I was hearing in the great breakout groups, I actually just wanted to encourage people, if you have any more time right now or some time tomorrow, hop on a meeting for a little bit. Even if you don't plan to talk, it will help to orient you to what people are talking about and to how the commissioners talk about this. And it actually makes some of the visual accessibility is actually almost easier to deal with on the meetings, because the commissioners have to describe what they're talking about in order to get the line drawers to write it down. So while it's an audio process in that way, it's very descriptive. And so it might be an easy way to digest some of the approach of how things are being talked about. Even if you go on for 10 minutes, you can get to that under the live meetings, under our meetings page, and then you might feel better empowered to go back and do your email or do something else after watching a little bit, or you might stay on the line and give feedback on the meeting itself. That was just that's what it came away from thinking might be helpful.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you to everyone for being here. I'm going to officially close to respect people's time. We will share the recording, and again, we'll email all the information out. If you didn't actually register, then I may not have your email, so be sure you put that in the chat.